are the biggest and best monthly InfoSec event in the world, according to folks who supposedly know this stuff. Meetings are unrated. That means we say fuck a lot. You've been warned. So, SecKC Code of Conduct. If you see anyone causing issues, find someone with a yellow badge. If there's a problem with someone in a yellow badge, find someone else with a yellow badge. And if you can't find a yellow badge, find some of us who have these white badges. So, things you should know. Destroy no data, maintain no persistence, and above all, do no harm. That said, we do encourage shenanigans. So, if you're playing Spot the Fed, we have them. So, that said, we don't keep any list of members or attendees or any of that fun stuff. Everyone is approachable, so meet someone new. Challenge ideas, not people. So, just because you disagree with someone, discuss the idea. Don't go after the person. And as always, assume everyone here is technical. Most of us, if not all of us, are. And if we're not familiar with something, most of us will tell you. So, does everyone see that big wall back there that says Boulevard?
Yeah, what about it?
That's the shut the fuck up wall.
Oh shit, word?
Word. So, you want to have a conversation during a talk? Go behind the wall. SecKC happens because of our volunteers and sponsors. And speaking of sponsors, if you know anyone who has a pile of money they would like to donate to us or sponsor an event, get them in touch with me. So, be the change you want to see at SecKC. So, get involved. If you don't like how we're doing something, if you think we can do something better, get involved. And we use Eventbrite to order pizza, so please sign up so we have enough pizza. And finally, SecKC all the things, so.
Fucking right!
Fuck yeah. And go buy swag. I don't know if Justin's out here tonight with the swag table, but, well, normally he's back there with the swag table, so buy it online. And here is our nice agenda, so. All right, let's get rolling.
Fuck yeah!
Fuck yeah. All right.
Is it still on?
Yeah, it's just muted.
Oh, fuck it.
Y'all some dead-ass motherfuckers tonight.
Who's here tonight?
I'm here!
A little bit louder, for fuck's sakes, people, come on. I know the audio issues sucked ass, but hey, we got it now, right? That's the important thing. All right, hold up. I got a bone to throw y'all for the news. Just a second. Let me find the HDMI. We're betting 1,000 tonight. See, be the change you want to see. We could use some help, motherfuckers. Come on. I drive out from Columbia every month to do this, so if I can do it, you can fucking do it. Sounds like you should just buy a house. It's doing that fucking thing again where I can't see my displays. System preferences, because I know keyboard shortcuts. Display. But do I? Yeah, maybe I don't. This is Catalina's fault, not fucking a cable. Scale? I mean, scales, I don't give a shit about that. I just need to be able to see 2 different displays so I get my notes this time. There we go. Look at that. I know how to do things. Kind of. All right, separate display. What's displaying? Okay, cool. Nothing sensitive. That's the scary part. Is that working right? Yeah. Fucking clap for that, you fucking idiots. Come on. I love you all, but are you asleep? For fuck's sakes, y'all. All right, so a little bit of a late start, but this is the news segment. If you haven't joined us for this before, this is 40 things that have happened between our last meeting and this meeting. I have 15 seconds to talk about each thing. Usually goes pretty humorously because I can't keep up with my own notes. You might be asking yourself, well, how do I actually learn anything about the shit that you're telling me? I'm going to post these links in our Slack channel. If you're not in our Slack, fucking fix that. Get in the Slack, join the News Links channel. You can get all of these tasty stories in their full glory. All right, so without any further ado, first up, we've got this Texas school district that got fished out of $2.3 million, Manor Independent School District. They said that the police department is pursuing strong leads, though, so I'm sure that they'll figure out who did this and they'll totally get their money back. It sucks, but hey, it happened. Skimmers are, of course, assholes, and they are opportunistic, so we've got one targeting a brush fire donation site. In this particular case, the attackers left the ATM ZOW malware, which is a real fucking cool name for a piece of malware. They took, oh fuck, all right, so there's a bank breach over in Australia. This group called P&M Bank had 100,000 names, addresses, email addresses, phone numbers, customer names, ages, account numbers, and account balances that were all compromised. So hooray, enough for me to order shit off of Amazon with your information. All right, I had a bet with the guy I wrote here on pussy cash leak. Holy shit, I said it without laughing. Okay, so this isn't funny though, unfortunately. So this is a site for cam girls, and there was a leak. Now, their sensitive data is out there. Their name, their birthday. There's creepy motherfuckers out there. Hannah Anderson is a children's clothing company. They had a breach for about 2 months between September and November. A quote-unquote unauthorized third party had access to payment card details that had been entered into their website. So if you order from that company, fucking check your shit. If you weren't aware, whenever you post shit online publicly, other people can see that. There are groups like Trello that make it pretty fucking obvious what your exposure level is, but despite that, a lot of people don't seem to realize this. Anyway, look into that. There's a really sweet blog post we got on GitHub from a guy who's got this new BMW, and he was like, this is super tight, but then he found out that the apps were fucking shit, and so he decided to hack the infotainment center and get the apps that he wanted on there. Really interesting story. If you hadn't heard, you've been living under a rock. There's a Internet Explorer 0 day that was being exploited in the wild. So it's bad enough that the US government knew about it and was telling other people about it. That's when you know it's really bad. It's patched now, obviously, but unfortunately, there's a lot of legacy things that require it. Hopefully people have patched. Avast was found selling all of the data that they collected about you to one of their subsidiaries. As it turns out, right after this story launched, like 2 days after this story broke, they said, oh yeah, we're totally going to close that subsidiary. So yeah, it was totally legit. We got a blog post from GR Security talking about a Linux kernel patch that didn't actually fix anything and in fact made something even fucking worse. Now to be fair, GR Security has a lot of beef with the Linux developers, so this is kind of biased, but still an interesting read nonetheless. We've got some vigilante hacker that's going out there and is removing the 4px malware from affected devices and leaving a pop-up on the machine saying, hey, update your fucking shit and install an antivirus. They thought this was a prank at first, but no, it actually appears someone took out their CNC. Proton VPN has been open sourced. Let's hear it for open source software. Yeah, fucking right. Open source software is awesome, and now if you are smart enough, you can take a look at Proton VPN's code and decide if it's good enough for you and or your business. We've got Microsoft, and they have released the Azure security benchmarks. So again, this is nice because we see some standardization, we see some guidelines. I can't hear you talk shit because I talk too loud, I'm sorry. But it's nice to see that Microsoft is releasing some documentation for us. New York has decided to start thinking about whether or not to ban ransomware payments. Okay, really cool idea, and I understand the spirit behind it. One word, hospitals. Everything's all fun and fucking games until human loss of life is in your threat profile. So yeah, good luck with that. OurMine has compromised a few different accounts. I show Netflix here, but this time they were actually going after football teams. Yes, they got the Kansas City Chiefs, but it doesn't fucking matter because we won the fucking Super Bowl. Yes! Fucking right. And it turns out they actually also compromised some social media accounts as well. So the Twitter of Facebook, why? Anyway, they compromised that as well. Again, not a big deal. What are you going to do but, degrade the public opinion of them, which, can it go down any further? Kali Linux 2021 came out. We've got a new rolling release, so lots of new changes here. Root is gone. You are not root by default anymore. There is a single installer image. You can now run NetHunter without rooting your Android device, and there's some other shit in there as well. Newsflash, guys. DEF CON actually got fucking canceled. Okay, didn't get canceled, but it did get pushed back. DEF CON China did because of, yeah, you guessed it, the Wuhan virus. So, hey, all it took was a plague-type situation to cancel DEF CON. Side note, has anyone here ever seen the pseudo website's logo? That's the official fucking logo. This isn't a meme. This is on the sudo website. Long story short, there was a vulnerability in sudo, but it only affected you if you show stars when you type in your password. We've got NIST that are testing some methods for obtaining evidence from damaged forensic devices. So criminals, if they're about to get caught, they might do something to try and destroy their phone or their computer or whatever. We're trying to figure out how to still get shit off of there. If you've got kids or if you know interested youths who want to get into hacking but can't find a way to get really passionate about it, Xbox has a bug bounty program now. So tell your kids, hey, go fucking hack your Xbox. Maybe make some money off of it. Pretty cool stuff. Again, they aren't paying a whole hell of a lot, but more than nothing. This is the two gentlemen from Coalfire who were arrested for a while. Happy ending, they are not being charged with anything. Hooray, it only took 2 fucking months of bullshit and taxpayer money to come to that conclusion. We've got a independent researcher here talking about an attack that they have noticed on one of their Onion services to what they believe to be attempting to de-anonymize Tor circuits. So long story short, they're interested in finding the guard node. Read about it if you're interested. The Zero Day Initiative is a group that has released information and has disclosed vulnerabilities to vendors. They kind of act as a broker of vulnerabilities from researchers to vendors. Here's their stats over the past years. They've been doing a good job. They're patting themselves on the back. It's kind of interesting and cool, though. WINNITI was seen targeting Hong Kong universities. So again, unfortunately, with the movement still going on in Hong Kong, we are still seeing government action against citizens of Hong Kong, and now we have attributed evidence of at least one attack to WINNITI. This is a really interesting art installment, but this dude took 99 cell phones, put it in a fucking wagon, and is creating traffic jams. Really cool, right? Interesting, but hey, could you use this to rob a bank? I don't know. Someone let me know if you want to try. TeamViewer had a thing happen. They've been continuing to have things happen, but in this particular case, we've got a researcher who has discovered that TeamViewer encrypts all of their passwords with a particular key and a particular IV. And yeah, we know what it is, and you can go decrypt all that information. Don't use fucking TeamViewer. If you are into new tools, so Tratus is actually Archwisp's employer, if I'm not mistaken. They've written a new tool called Flamingo. It's written in Go, and it attempts to gather credentials that are passed across the network. We've got a backdoor, and I'm going to mispronounce this, I'm sorry, Zhonglai software, which is one of those situations where they make a lot of software that is used by a lot of other companies. So we've got this white box labeling like Russian doll thing going on. Backdoor, bad. Cisco, unfortunately, had a few vulnerabilities to take care of over the past month as well, collectively referred to as CD-Pwn, as they all affect the Cisco Discovery Protocol. It's a layer 2 thing. 5 remote code execution vulnerabilities, maybe 4, I can't remember. Microsoft Teams went out for about 12 hours or so because Microsoft apparently can't rotate TLS certificates on a timely basis. I give them shit for that, but at the same time, I'm also not running fucking, the world's infrastructure. So, all right, you know what? You can get a fuck up. There was a breach at GRIDWORKS IC. You probably have never heard of GRIDWORKS IC, but if I told you that every Medicare recipient in Oregon had their personal data disclosed, you might be a little bit more up in arms about this. That is the fucked up part about these data breaches, is that we pay the cost. We've come to discover that Tesla is able to remotely revoke abilities from your vehicle, which it begs a lot of questions about, is this like DLC or what? But that's also kind of scary if that system is compromised. The Washington Post had a really interesting article that was posted a couple of days ago discussing the real-life story of the CIA and how they essentially were the ones behind all major manufacturers' encryption usage, and they saw all that. I'm going to mispronounce this too. Maastricht University wound up paying 30 Bitcoin in a ransomware demand. Again, don't fucking pay unless someone's going to die if you don't. 30 Bitcoin was valued at about 300,000 USD at the time. We've got a blog post from another independent researcher here talking about who harvests personal data and where they sell it. They focus on this one particular company, Lucia. Of course, hey, you install a plugin and it harvests information from your LinkedIn and all that fun stuff. Indiana University wound up accidentally disclosing 100,000 students' GPAs to other students. Again, I wouldn't have given a shit about this. My GPA wasn't great, wasn't bad either. But if I were a proud person and I had a shitty GPA, I can easily see how someone would be upset. FTK Imager now supports APFS. It only took them 2.5 fucking years. Hell is apparently frozen over at this point, but hey, that's pretty cool information. Again, FTK Imager being a really good free tool for forensic engagements that don't have a lot of budget behind them. We had a remote code execution vulnerability in Android's Bluetooth stack come about. This one was particularly scary because it didn't require any user interaction whatsoever. Your attacker simply had to be within proximity to send you a poison beacon. And then finally, we had the Iowa caucus not too long ago, and unfortunately, even the Democrats can't do shit correctly. As it turns out, they got this app from, I'm not fucking kidding, a company called Shadow Inc., and, well, read more about it if you want, but it's kind of weird. What do you expect, though? Shadow Inc. And that is the news.
Here, 6:50, we've got our first talk coming up. A couple of housekeeping items here real quick. SecKC needs sponsors. Sponsors are what helps this organization continue as far as the facility rental and the pizza purchase. We literally drained the bank account tonight for what we do for pizzas, and we ran out. So if you have a lead on an organization that would like to sponsor, that would like to step up and be a part of the local Kansas City hacking culture, then have them get in touch with us. There's a link off of the website, at least there's supposed to be. The website's getting refreshed. The new site went live today thanks to Jafer, Geoda, and Hack the Planet, probably? I think so. So anyways, new site's going live. There should be a sponsorship page on there in order to help whoever it is get in touch with our contacts here. So sponsors are really, really helpful. Also, speaking of pizza, we sent out a monthly email. We asked you to register for the meeting tonight. That is not anything more than helping us get a people count, an actual body count for that pizza purchase. So help us out on that so that we have those quantities dialed in. All right, first talk of the night. We have some great talks, by the way. So we've got 3 talks. Up next is going to be Matt Danda, 10 minutes on security and technical report writing with a focus on security. After that, we've got some email talks coming up, and then before the last talk, one of our esteemed members, Triwolf, is I think co-authored or authored, maybe co-authored, I think, a CompTIA Security Plus study book. And so she's got a giveaway plan for that, so that'll happen a little bit before 8. But for right now, let's turn it over to Matt. Thank you, Matt.
Thank you. All right. Security reports. Yes. Inspired by the book Nobody Wants to Read Your Shit by Steven Pressfield. Security reports. Reporting is the final and potentially most important phase of an assessment. And today I'm going to cover some characteristics of good technical writing, the general structure of assessment reports, and some real-world tips for improving your writing style. So I'm a software tech writer, and during the tech boom, I wrote a book called Protect Yourself Online, published by Microsoft Press. This was way back before many of you were born, back when I was young and full of life, not this worn-out shell of a man you see today. So this presentation is important because for pen testers and security researchers, the report is the product. It can be a market differentiator, and the report can create a competitive advantage. So what is good writing? According to Steven Pressfield, reading is a transaction. Nobody wants to read anything. Therefore, you must give the reader something worthy of their time. And ask yourself with every sentence you write, is this interesting? I mean, sure, it's interesting to you, but is this what the reader wants to know? So know your audience. Do not start writing until you've defined who is reading this document. What are their expectations? What questions do they want answered? And does the reader really care about such and such? So good writing versus great writing. A good writer can create a beautiful sentence. A great writer can cut that sentence because it doesn't directly support the purpose of the document or section. Great writers know exactly what the reader wants. So let's talk about technical writing real quick. What is good tech writing? When the information on paper or screen goes straight to the reader's brain with as little mental effort as possible. The reader should not even notice the writing. A good tech writer does not use complex grammatical structures, use $10 words when smaller, cheaper words can do the job, or insert haphazardly cool points just because they're cool points. Everything you write must fit the planned structure. So your first lesson today in technical writing. There's 3 types of content in technical documents: concepts, task, and reference. Understand the difference. A concept explains how something works. A task is the step-by-step instructions, their procedures. And reference is a large table of information. Understand these differences and try to keep them separate in your documentation. Your second lesson today in good technical writing is know the definition of information. There's a difference between data, information, and knowledge. Data is a raw piece or collection of something. That's just a bunch of numbers. Information is adding meaning to the data. Now the numbers are phone numbers, now that's information. Knowledge is the ability to apply information in novel ways to solve problems. Knowledge is what you get paid for. My example here is, let's say there's a crime in a certain place at a certain time. Your ability to find out which phone numbers were in the area and using data analysis, create a list of potential suspects based on that information. That is using knowledge to solve problems. Oops. Oh, okay. So in writing a report, demonstrate your knowledge. Again, that's what you're getting paid for. Provide the information that supports your knowledge and acknowledge that there's lots of data. And also separate your concepts, procedures, and reference, and know your audience. Let's talk about the structure of reports. You have some flexibility in how to structure a security report. However, they do follow a general pattern. They all begin with an executive summary. The executive summary should be a 1-page, 5-minute read. The audience of this document is the decision maker. Tell them only what they need to know to do their job. Save your cool technical narratives for later in the document. If the company did something well, be sure to mention it so the report is not all bad news. So the structure, the remainder of the report provides the details and recommendations. The audience of the rest of the document is the implementer, responsible for acting on the findings. So how about some examples of report structures? Rhino Security Labs said every report should have 4 pieces: the executive summary, a walkthrough of technical risks, potential impact of vulnerability, and remediation options. Offensive Security has 5 pieces: the summary, a narrative of work performed, conclusions, recommendations, and appendices with technical details. There's your data. Scan Source Services had 7 things: the executive summary, the action plan, a table of technical findings with ratings, high, medium, and low, strategic analysis, threat case profiles, conclusion, and appendices. This guy, Michael Bazell, has 5 things: the summary, suspect details, a narrative report, a summary report, and digital evidence. At the end, there's the data dump. And all of these follow this pattern of demonstrating your knowledge first, then going into the information, and in the appendices at the end, the data. Of course, reports should have some sort of visual representation: dashboards, threat ratings, ginormous tables. Here you can create a visual style that's unique to your organization, but still conventional and familiar. You can create a template to use over and over in your security reports. And I just grabbed a bunch of images that looked nice from other reports, like that. Dashboard, exclamation points, check marks, more check marks, question mark, and a nice boring graph, but a graph. So for more examples, For more examples, go to GitHub, search on public pen testing reports. You'll see a bunch of them. And Pluralsight had a nice tutorial, writing pen testing reports by Will Vandeventer. But before I end, I do have one more important writing tip. That is using passive voice. I hope you know what that is. The general rule, do not use passive voice. At best, it requires more effort from the reader, and that's at best, because with passive voice, the sentence is missing information. So examples would be, efforts were placed, the attacks were conducted, the assessment was conducted. You're not saying who did the action of the sentence. And using passive voice may tell the reader you're making assumptions about the reader's knowledge. For example, the passive sentence, the password was hashed, that makes sense to all of us, but to a reader, they may have no idea what you're talking about. So if you rewrite it in active voice, the authentication system hashed the password, the reader still may not know what hashing is, but they know more about what they don't know, and they can frame and ask better questions and have less of a panic attack. Passive voice may indicate that you're missing information and you don't want to admit it. For example, the report was generated. That's passive. You could be saying, I have no idea where this report came from. So write it in passive to demonstrate that you do know what's going on. Alice ran reportwriter.exe, which generated the report. And finally, passive voice does have one use, and that is to intentionally obfuscate information. The files were misplaced. That's passive. If I were to write this in active voice, I would say the CEO misplaced the files. That would be an appropriate use of passive, and that's about the only time to use passive voice. With that, in conclusion, reporting is the final and potentially most important phase of the assessment. The goal of the assessment is to provide the client with a comprehensive view of their security and their ability to act to correct any issues. Any part that they cannot understand or act upon may as well not have happened. Therefore, it benefits everyone if the team puts in the time and effort to develop a clear and comprehensive report of the assessment. And I am finished. Awesome. Dude. There we go. Awesome. I'm Matt. My name is Matt.
Damn, sorry, my bad. I'm fucking awful with names.
Ladies and gentlemen, oh fuck. Ladies and gentlemen, one more round of applause for Matt.
Now, before we get back to the beats, I have a request. So, I know that y'all were asleep in the beginning of the night, and Kayla came up here and she told y'all about the Boulevard Wall. Anyone remember what that wall's called? Yeah, it's called the Shut the Fuck Up Wall. So the thing is that I like to watch these talks too, but I gotta sit back in that sound booth on them ones and twos, and y'all motherfuckers are loud because y'all are awake now. If you're gonna have a conversation, do everyone that's trying to listen to the talk a favor, go behind the Shut the Fuck Up wall, because you're making it so that, yeah, see, people tell me to shut the fuck up. I need to go behind that Shut the Fuck Up wall. But seriously, people that want to listen to the talks can't hear it, so tone your conversations down, use that inside voice, or go behind the Shut the Fuck Up wall. All right, let's get to the beats. Oh wait, hold up, never mind. We ain't doing the beats just yet. Lauren wants to say some shit.
Sorry, this is off schedule, but we're just gonna come back here, because I don't think the people back here were listening about what this fucking boulevard wall is. Hold on, 1 second. Hey, Oz, what's the boulevard wall?
It's the Shut the Fuck Up Wall!
Did you guys mute me? Hey, if you're talking back here, can you move behind there? Shut the fuck up, you get behind the wall. Thanks, guys.
Wait for it. Almost there. I had to pay by the track, so we have to, there we go.
Hey, hey, how's everybody doing tonight? All right. So I think we all got a good lesson on where you go if you want to talk during somebody else's presentation, right? Behind the shut the fuck up wall, right? All right. Because you're going to want to listen to this talk. How many people have used email before? Yeah? How many people here are under 30? Wow. You guys have no idea how email works other than the fact that you think it's probably antiquated and it doesn't make a lick of sense, right? Yes. Yes, I am. Until you give your talk, I'm going to assume you don't know anything. Ah, fair enough. Don't trust him. He's over 30. So we're going to talk about email, which, for better or worse, still remains everywhere, right? It's like, how does this happen? But then you think about it when you look at all your different variations of communication methods on your phone, right? You got Signal, you got Slack, you got direct messages over here, but none of this shit ever talks to each other. And you sit there and you think, God, email talks to everything. For better or worse, email talks to everything. How does this shit work? Well, Joel is going to give us a very basic rundown of how email, the thing that makes the world go round, works at a very low level. So, let's give him a round of applause.
Actually, he lied. This is how to break it. All right. So, hi, my name's Joel. I'll be your speaker. A little bit of everything geek. Volunteer for the AV crew. Come on, a little bit of love. They don't get a lot today, but they get a little bit. Okay? So, a little bit of love for the AV crew. All right, that's good. Next time they'll get it right, and then I expect more. So, the whole point of this talk is anybody who's been an email administrator has undoubtedly run across the surge of fraud that's just been pouring in, and it just keeps coming and coming and coming, and they keep coming up with new and interesting ways to get past all your defenses. So, really, TLDR, if you're going to watch, one talk this year, go watch this talk, and then just kind of read through this. Essentially, do your DMARC, make sure you set up an email security gateway, and cry. I don't know. Really? There isn't a whole, because a lot of this stuff is super, super simple, but it works. It's terrible. Key risks that we're talking about here is that you got business email compromise, which is somebody impersonates one of your executives and then makes the company make a horrible bad decision, usually ending up in everybody getting fired. Then you also got your unsolicited email advertisement. I think that's been with this since the beginning of time. Spam. Spam has been unwanted, but you just kind of have to live with it. You got phishing, which is credential theft. That one, that's sneaky. And it could be any number of things. It could be somebody who's trying to take credentials and leverage it to do more spam, or it could be malware, a lot of stuff. And malware trying to steal accounts so it can propagate through a network. So these are kind of the key risks to take a look at when you're talking about email. Forgery. Has anybody seen the innards of an email? Because you've got the usual kind of, you've got the from, the to, and you got the subject, maybe carbon copy, blind carbon copy, and you got the body of it, but there's a lot more to it. If you actually open up the email itself, you have a lot of encoded information, you have these miles and miles and miles of header stuff. So it doesn't take much to make an email look like something it isn't. I can take an email, manipulate the header a little bit, and make it look like your boss is sending you something, telling you you're fired or something like that. So you also got, there's 101 ways to do it. So one of the ways is forged headers. Another one is doppelganger domains, which is one-offs. So if you're a school district
and it's somethingschools.org, then they just take up somethingschool, singular.org. It's happened. Your business, undoubtedly somebody's probably picked up a whole bunch of one-off domains just to, all around the ones you've got, just so they can redirect business away from you. Multi-domain email security. So a lot of times you have a really big email domain, you have to split it out. And when you're setting your security policies, you have to set those policies for all of your domains, not just one or two. So that's something important to keep in mind. You also have upstream provider security problems. So for instance, if you use Office 365 and you only use SPF security, then anybody that is on Office 365 can spoof emails from your domain. You have to set the whole DMARC thing to get that to work. You also have leapfrogging, where somebody steals your account, uses your account to steal somebody else's, and to leapfrog through your domain. Then there's supply chain fraud, where you have somebody that goes to a vendor they know you use, spoofs your account to them, and then gets them to send you stuff and then bill you for it. And then you got spam calendar invites. Phones and a lot of personal devices treat calendar items as it just automatically accepts them, so potentially you'll get spam and other malicious communications that way. And then you have manipulation of your the configuration of your security gateways. So if you're using like Ironport or anything else, there's important steps that you need to follow when you're setting up an email security system. One of those things is to prevent people from bypassing it, because a lot of this stuff sits out in the cloud. So it doesn't take much to figure out, well, 6 months ago your SMTP server was here, now it's here, and all my stuff's getting blocked. Well, I'll just continue to send it to the old one, even though DNS hasn't been updated yet. So a lot of things like that. Header and display name forgery. This is amazingly easy. Header forgery, it takes a little bit of understanding of how email works to manipulate the headers. So you can forge an email and make it look like it's from somebody else. With the display name, it doesn't require any special knowledge. You just change the from name inside of your email client, and then it sends out an email with whatever name you want in front of your email address. People don't catch that, especially when you're looking on a phone. A phone will not necessarily tell you what, they'll just show you the display name of that person, and it won't tell you their actual full email address. And a lot of people don't know to look. Doppelganger domains come in a lot of different flavors. There's one-offs I talked about. Also, you can potentially make use of UTF-8 and Punycode and that kind of stuff. One-offs most directly in sending emails and trying to do business email compromise. With Punycode, it's mostly around URLs or something like that you're trying to embed inside of a malicious email. So you can very easily make a link that looks like one thing but goes to a completely different domain. The multi-domain email security misconfiguration, DMARC consists of 3 records that you have to create. You got DKIM message signing, which is you're doing a signature on each outgoing email that you send, and that signature has to match something that you publish on your domain name. SPF is a list of trusted SMTP servers that you're allowed to send from. So if you're getting emails from your company's domain from someplace in Taiwan and it's not yours, that's what SPF is meant to deal with. Then, but the problem with these is that they're very limited. In order for them to work, they have to work quickly, or else people will just bypass it or won't use it because it's not usable. So they have limitations on how big those records can be. So if you have a mammoth record with like several thousand IP addresses and different records and all that kind of stuff, it's going to take forever to resolve. No one will want to use that. So it's limited to 10. A lot of times, email providers will bypass and won't trust you if you have more than 10 records on your SPF and DMARC and all that kind of stuff. So you have to split out a lot of your email into different subdomains in order to kind of accomplish work and still have a trustworthy email address to use when sending emails to coworkers and colleagues and that kind of stuff. So you can potentially set policies for the root domain and then set kind of a blanket policy for everything, or you can set individual policies on each subdomain. So you have a lot of options. A lot of people don't know this, and so they misconfigure their DMARC and SPF settings, and then all of a sudden you can start spamming somebody from a subdomain. Upstream, I told you about the Office 365 trick where if somebody gets their email on Office 365 hacked, you can potentially spam or spoof anybody that uses that. And so the only way you can get past that is, and defend against that, is to use message signing. So that's the important part of making sure you implement all of DMARC. Okay, countermeasures. So inside each email, when your email security appliance goes through and receives an email, it'll go through and a lot of them will come up with a score. And so it's kind of like page ranks, but it's going through the content of your email and it's looking for things. So it's looking at links. Particularly, it's trying to look at links to known malware domains and then trying to download that and figure out whether it's good or bad, looking at PDFs, attachments, that kind of stuff. With a lot of times what I've seen is that you'll receive a spoofed email, and then inside of it you'll have junk. They've just inserted bogus headers, they've inserted all kinds of different links. Those links, they like using link shorteners, and then potentially they like recursive link shorteners. So a shortened link to a shortened link to a shortened link to an infected document. So you have a lot of that to look for when you're looking at questionable emails. Link to hacked websites. I think most of them I've seen have to do with just stealing credentials, so phishing. What we've seen when somebody gets phished is that they got into the organization and they would set up camp inside the person's email box, and then they would kind of create it so that that person could continue to use it. And any new email that they received, that person wouldn't necessarily see. So we've seen it as simple as deleting everything in the mailbox after they're done, or as complex as setting up a complex feed system where there's an email rule that will take something out of the mailbox if it matches some type of pattern and put it into some hidden mailbox, deep within, their folder structure, so that that person can come back with that person's account and continue to use it, even though that person is unaware of it actually being breached. So they'll be very quiet about it, and they want to get the most use out of that person's stolen account as possible. And the reason why they like to do that is because an organization takes a lot of effort to make their email system trustworthy, meaning that they have DKIM, they have DMARC, they have all that kind of stuff, all of these things that they can do to their emails that make people trust it. And they have control of a trustworthy email account, and that gets them past everybody else's defenses. So, the importance of defending against phishing. Supply chain fraud, we actually saw this with Dell. Somebody spoofed one of our employee accounts and tried to get a computer with Dell, and looked at the original email that Dell sent us, and they said, this looks weird, and says, yeah, it's blatantly, it wasn't even, they didn't bother to spoof it, it was just header forgery, where they just changed the display name. And then on top of all that, it was like really fishy, like they're trying to say, okay, and can you send this massive computer to Iowa, on behalf of local school district. Talked about calendar abuse, where phones and that kind of stuff will take calendar invites and then just automatically add it to your calendar. So that day comes along and all of a sudden you have your entire day eaten up by spam advertisements. And we talked a little bit earlier about the gateway bypass, and we actually saw a lot of this happening with phishing, where they realized that we had an email security gateway, and most people don't block traffic to their old mail server. So mail will come into the mail server. It doesn't check to see if it's been through the security gateway or not. So it's important that when you implement any advanced security, that you kind of patch up that problem. So you go to your mail server and say, don't accept any email from anybody except our mail security provider. In some cases, I've seen poisoning. We mentioned earlier that inside the header, attackers would like to put lots of BS things. We ran a couple instances where I saw a bunch of domains that didn't exist. It was mentioned prominently inside of the header. I saw a bunch of stuff where just links upon links. We have the recursive links, just a whole bunch of stuff. And it looked like what they were trying to do was poison the security score. So that's something to look for in your forged emails, is that they'll try to put in chaff. So the end games here is that you have service theft, which is phishing, malware. You have fraud, which is theft of services, theft of money. Gift cards are very, very popular. So if anybody hops on any type of chat or on email and asks you for a gift card, or say, I'm heading out of town and I don't have time to go somewhere, can you purchase some gift cards, scratch them off and send me a picture? That's a warning sign. We have a lot of that. And a lot of these are very thinly veiled, where it's just simple display header forgery. Invoice fraud, where they'll send you an invoice of something that you didn't buy and they're trying to get you to respond to it and open a document. Bank transfer, all kinds of stuff. And then spam. The same kind that's been with us since the beginning of time. They've gotten better, believe it or not. Difficulties I've had, and you've probably run into yourselves. You may not control your domain name. So you have a third party that's running your domain name, and you may not have the ability to post DMARC, DCAM, any of that information. There's a lot of certificate security you can add to your domain name potentially that will help protect against spoofing, that if you don't have control over it, it's kind of limits what you can do with your job. Poorly designed anti-spam tools. A lot of this stuff just can't handle the tactics that we just talked about, which is if you give it bad information, bad URLs, self-referencing URLs, any of that kind of stuff, it just gums it up and it doesn't work. And at the end of the day, you look kind of like an idiot because you can't stop it. Well, you as an individual, as a human being, can see this, but the computer can't because it's working off of a static rule set that can't change. And another thing is that time you spend doing investigations on rogue emails, fraud, and that kind of stuff, it wears on you. You know, it's intensely repetitive. And so if you don't have some means of automating that, then you're going to get burnout and potentially you're going to miss something important.
Eat the mic, they say.
So silver bullets. These are magic things that we are sold, telling us that it'll solve all of our problems. Personal favorite is AI. AI is supposed to be the silver bullet that will solve all your woes. There is a wonderful DEF CON AI Village talk. It's available online on YouTube. I recommend highly that you look it up. And it discusses means of evaluating vendors' AI systems, important questions to ask, and other things like that, and kind of how to evaluate whether this is a brand new product that isn't going to work very well, or if it's a tried, tested, and true product that will work well. So important things there to keep in mind is that it works best with static data sets, and we're dealing with people, and people know how to change very quickly. And so AI has a hard time keeping up with bad guys. Encryption, email encryption, LavaBit, GPG, S-MIME. A lot of this is out there and potentially is a solution to be able to tell who is the good person versus the bad person based off of if they have signed it with some type of trusted encryption. This is good in practice, or this is good in theory. In practice, not so good because of how email works. It's displaying something to you and potentially going through and showing HTML, which can be manipulated. So there's a talk last year at DEF CON covering GPG encryption problems, where people can manipulate GPG clients, where you send somebody email, they respond back, and they embed stuff hidden with CSS, and then because you respond to it, the email GPG client will sign it, and you can effectively sign stuff as somebody else just by tricking somebody into receiving an email and responding to you. So encryption, great in theory. You just got to make sure everybody's trained up on it, and you have to make sure that your clients are up to par and not going to do anything silly like that. So the business partner one I mentioned earlier with Dell, and somebody sent our Dell rep an email saying, hey, I need this big badass computer, and can you send it to Iowa? And then they kind of sent it to us and said, this looks fishy. And we looked at it, and it was fishy. It was simple header forgery. It was a very poor attempt at hiding identity, but I think those poor attempts actually are more effective because it doesn't trigger the email security system as quickly. So it's just kind of one of those things where it's simple, it's stupid, and it works. And it's not really a problem of the system, it's a problem of the user not being able to recognize it. We had a hell of a lot of people complaining that people were getting emails from the school administrators saying, hey, I need a gift card. You know, it's a loan, I'll get it back to you. I mean, it just came in over and over and over again, and they just kept, you know, and so we found ways around that, patterns that they used, patterns in kind of the form letter they used and that kind of stuff, but it was just kind of a cat and mouse back and forth thing with them. And so admin impersonation, we had somebody use a one-off URL trying to impersonate a district administrator, and that was, it almost worked. I think we had a lot of extra security stuff in the background that ended up catching that before it became a problem. So the takeaway here is a lot of defensive measures that you implement don't really work well by themselves. However, if you layer them up and do defense in depth, you can defend against, let's say, 95% of it. So, and really the whole point of this is to reduce the work you have to do. This is, if you're going through and filtering out 95%, that's 95% of more time that you have in your day not having to deal with this. So anything you can do to layer up defenses so you have to deal with this less is a good thing. And I mentioned DMARC before. Does anybody have any, is everybody familiar with DMARC? Okay, I see one hand. A couple, two or three. You need to do DMARC. DMARC doesn't necessarily defend you against bad guys, but it helps you, one, your email systems become more trustable, so you won't have as many bounce backs. It helps prevent any type of advanced header forgery because you have encryption signatures and that kind of stuff. So I have a lot of extra resources that I'll show you here in a little bit that you can use if you need that. Splunk has an app for DMARC tools, and presentation here if you just want to take a picture of that. There we go. So, any case, any questions?
Yeah, DMARC versus DKIM.
Okay, DMARC is setting a policy that coordinates, essentially you're stating that we have SPF and we have DMARC enabled, and if either or both of these are failed, either the email is coming from a server that isn't ours or it has an invalid message header signature, you should do X. And X can be to block it and drop it, or it can be to just flag it as questionable, and so it'll go in their spam box. So when you're setting policies like this, it's for your email server, so it's for the sender. So the idea is that when you set up these policies, then when somebody receives an email from your domain, it is gauged to be more trustworthy because you have these policies set on your domain name. Any other questions? Thank you very much for your time. Here it is.
You look through your watch, so it's like, I better hurry up.
All right, thank you. Sneaks behind me. Thank you.
I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I was kind of a little bit nervous.
I think you did well.
Yeah, good enough.
Okay, hold up. Oh shit, that's loud, y'all. Y'all better not be leaving right now because we're doing a book giveaway. I don't know if you heard, but I wrote a book. I hate talking about it, but I love giving them out for free. So, can you raise your hands if you are not one of my friends? Sorry, Jordan, because you're my enemy. Can you keep your hands raised if you love free shit? And can you keep your hands raised if you want to get your Security Plus or you want to get some foundational knowledge because of Security Plus? All right, and last requirement, keep your hands up if you don't mind me coming to talk to you with a microphone. Oh, all of them went down. Fuck you guys, I want to hear what you have to say. Okay, hold on, we're going to come out in the audience. I don't need this anymore, it's super dark. I said, hold on, keep your hands up. Hello, are you willing to be on the microphone?
I am willing to talk into a microphone.
Are you doing any cool projects right now?
I teach Security Plus, and my students need your book.
That's a very compelling argument. Congratulations. Yep. All right, we got two more. So you've already heard the task. You're going to have to tell me what you're working on. And just because I pass you up doesn't mean you disqualify yourself. I don't know about you. You got a beard. Hello. What's your name?
All right. Hello. My name is Travis.
Good. What are you working on right now?
I'm sorry?
What are you working on right now? Anything cool?
Oh, what am I working on right now? A lot of stuff. I'm actually going to school at college in New York, and just kind of dabbling in a lot of Python and the other things right now.
Would you be willing to give a SecKC talk on your Python dabblings?
Yeah. Positive answer, yes.
Okay, so he's going to give a talk this year, and I'm going to give him a book. Somebody sign this man up. All right, keep your hands up. We got one more coming. I don't think he qualifies because I know you, but I like your hoodie. Hi, what's your name?
Hey, I'm Jake.
Okay, Jake, are you working on any cool projects right now?
Yeah, I'm studying for Security Plus certs and working on my arch limits price.
I have no idea what that means, but would you be willing to give a SecKC talk on that?
I don't know who would care.
Can you guys give a round of applause if you would have cared to hear this man talk? Okay, so are you gonna give a SecKC talk?
I guess.
Okay, sign this man up, he gets a book. Thank you all. That's all we have. I hope this helps. You can get him on Amazon, shameless self-promotion. If you want me to sign it, I'm happy to do that. Thank you. We love SecKC. If you give a talk, I might bring you your own book. So sign up. Thanks, y'all.
Everybody. So, before I get started, we're gonna say it's because I have important stuff to say. It's maybe because I'm not sure if I can fill 40 minutes. I called y'all out for not shutting the fuck up, and then y'all shut the fuck up. So, give yourselves a round of applause for, yes. I appreciated it. I got to hear Joel's talk. He's up here snapping, if you can't see. It's very cute and lovely. Let's see. I think that's the. Oh wait, no, there was one other thing. So those of you that don't know, again, I mentioned I come out from Columbia. I teach an intro to computer security course. I have some students here. Wave your hands. Okay, employers. If there's employers behind the shut the fuck up wall, go ahead and shut the fuck up and come up here for a second. Hey students, go ahead and wave your hands again. Yeah, employers, go talk to those students. Those are some smart motherfuckers, and not only are they smart, they give enough of a shit about security to make the drive out from Columbia. Round of applause for them. Fucking right. All right, so I'm gonna say that's enough stalling. I'm gonna go ahead and get cracking on mine. Hopefully y'all brought your laptops with you if you wanted to follow along. This is going to have a analyze headers with me section. You don't have to follow along with that or anything, but if you so desire, bust out that laptop. I'm gonna have a bit.ly link for you to go for. I assure you, in this particular case, you can trust me. You shouldn't necessarily trust me in other situations, but remember, SecKC, do no harm. I do take that very seriously. So please, I assure you, when that bit.ly link comes up, you can trust me. Before I get too terribly far, again, most of you probably know who I am, but this is who I am and what I do. I actually have another cert. I haven't updated this. I've got GFNA as well. Yeah, capitalism. Sans certs are great, but man, are they expensive. So my primary role is a security analyst at the University of Missouri-Columbia campus. They also pay me a little bit on the side to teach security, which is a really cool gig because I basically get extra money just to talk about the shit that I love. And then, yeah, some other shit that I am or do are there as well. So with no further ado, this message, or this talk, I should say, is about headers. Now, you might be asking yourself, what the fuck are headers anyway? Now, I realize that I actually didn't finish my animations. Behind that image, what you would see is the fave icon for the RFC website. You could go read the RFCs on message headers. I've done it. It's not fun. It's boring as fuck. So part of what I'm doing here tonight is kind of personalizing what message headers are. I'm giving it to you in a little bit less of a dry format, and hopefully you'll learn something in the process. So again, I don't want to talk about the RFCs. Basically, what message headers are logs for email. They are, in fact, more than that. That's not a fantastic way to phrase them, but conceptually speaking, this is what message headers are and what they facilitate. Why would we want logs for our email? Because in case you weren't aware, there are in fact assholes that use the internet. And those assholes have access to email servers. As Joel discussed, everyone uses email. Email is an ubiquitous communication medium. Whether we like it or not, millions of dollars of business occurs over email messages every single day. There's literally a quantifiable amount of money that would be lost if a company's email server were to go down for X period of time. So again, it's pretty important, shall we say. Now, before I actually get into analyzing message headers and talking about what those headers are, the first thing I want to tackle is how these headers get formed as email is being sent across. So, in a nutshell, this is how email operates. Soak it in, ladies and gentlemen. This is the most technical diagram you are going to get in this entire talk. Oh man, I don't think I put the joke one in there. There's another really good joke modification of this image where all of the bottom section there is replaced with things like the NSA, the CIA, yada, yada, yada. Haha, it's hilarious because the government spies on me. I'm in danger. Now, all of this is how email works. Where is it that we get headers? We will see headers potentially added to a message at any of the locations that I have highlighted in a red box. Technically speaking, you could argue that you might even see them at C as well, somewhere at the corporate network, but since they specifically call out the MVAs, MTAs for both sides of the network, we're going to go ahead and assume, you know what, those are all the systems where headers are applied. Note that no headers are applied as it's actually traversing between the two mailboxes, right? Or the two mail servers, I should say. Headers are added in by the mail servers, all right? No arbitrary switch or whatever is adding any additional header that has nothing to do with it. So moving on, all right, cool. What are in these headers? These are the only fields you are guaranteed. The from and the date. I am 100% serious. You would know this if you read the RFC. Now, in practice, you are going to get a shitload more headers in any given email. In fact, you are very likely to see all, or at the very least, most of all of the header fields that we see on this slide here. So, moving on, message headers have a specific format. Right, I've shown that here. Pretty simple key value pair. We've got a field name, a delimiter, which in this case is a colon by default. Might not always be that way, but I've never seen a non-colon delimiter. And then the field body. All right, pretty simple shit so far, right? So if we take a look at these message fields, all right, one would assume that the account hackerman@missouri.edu sent this email at April 20th at 4:20 p.m. in 2020. Haha, we joke. And if we didn't have any other info available to us, that is pretty much the only assumption that you would be able to make with this information. Now, again, you're not actually likely to see any email that traversed the internet come to you in that form. All right? Pretty much any respectable mail server would examine a message that contained those headers and only those headers and say, fuck that shit, and drop it. All right, you wouldn't actually see it. In practice, you are going to see something kind of like what's on this screen. Again, old ass screenshot here if you couldn't tell. But what we've got here is this, pile of, again, at first glance, gobbledygook. How well can you see that? Well enough. Again, yeah, you can see some obvious information in there, but it's not easy to parse in its raw format by a human. So we use a lot of tools in order to help us see what all of the headers are in a given message. Now, if we add insult to injury, though, these fields might not always denote the info that you think. So Joel actually touched on this a little bit in his talk, but if we were to see this additional, I should say, header, there's, again, stuff in between there that is symbolized with the ellipses. That's the fancy name for ... if you weren't aware. If we saw this particular header field here, the sender, that is actually what contains the true sender of the email. Again, from is something that is easily editable and is not something that can be trusted, even though you would think at first glance, oh, if I look at the from header field, I'll know where the email came from. Again, intuitive but incorrect. Now, to add to more potential for confusion, we have what are known as X headers. X gon' give it to you. These headers are where the field is prefaced with an X to denote the fact that they are experimental. They're experimental insofar as the RFC message headers state that any permanent message header has to have a published RFC associated with them. In practice, they're what I'll call reliable enough. All right, we don't really have any guarantee on their accuracy or content, but absent some malicious mail server, we're not really probably going to be misled by these headers, at least not intentionally. Again, these headers are applied with the best of intentions, but aren't always correct due to the fun modern ways in which mail is set up and sent. No worries though, we've got lots of tools to do this job for us. I've got a short listing of possible tools that you can use here. First up there is MX Toolbox. This is a pretty common tool, one that I heard about a long time ago. Microsoft now also hosts their own mail header analyzer on an Azure instance. And then finally, I'm a really big fan of this project called MHA, Mail Header Analyzer. I prefer MHA because I can run it locally. Now don't get me wrong, I have no real reason to assume that MX Toolbox or Microsoft actually gives a shit about the headers that I'm putting into their tools, right? But again, why take the risk, right? What's the point? So I use a locally hosted one. Again, you don't have to. Certainly for the purposes of this particular do-it-together thing, feel free to go ahead and use either MX Toolbox or the Microsoft deployment there. So, now, we start getting to the fun part. If you trust me, and again, in this case you should, I mean, you don't have to, I don't give a shit. I'm just gonna keep doing me. But you can follow along if you go to that particular bit.ly link. That's going to take you to my Box account. I have shared with you a folder, and within that folder there are 4 text files named header1.txt, header2.txt, header3, and header4. Yeah, thank you. Wake back up. Come on, you all did so good after the first 20 minutes. So, what? Talk shit again. I'm stalling so people can go to the bit.ly link. That is what she said. It's been a while. Are we still doing that? Do we still do phrasing too? Yeah. We do whatever the fuck we want. All right, now, while I stall a little bit longer for time, just in case, again, people want to download these header files and follow along, before we get into actually reviewing them, I want to make something very, very clear, all right? Headers cannot, by themselves, determine whether an email is legitimate or not. Repeat after me. Headers cannot determine whether an email is legitimate or not. Not very enthusiastic, but that's fine. You all understood. All headers are able to do is help you make an informed decision on whether or not that message is legitimate. Oftentimes you can get almost all the way there with the content in those headers, but by themselves they cannot tell you whether or not something is legitimate or not. So, easy example to illustrate this. Let's say that an attacker has managed to compromise the mailbox of some contractor that works for the university. All right, and let's say that that attacker sends a fish to the person who pays that contractor. And they send that fish and they say, hey, I'm Mr. or Mrs. Contractor. You know that bank account number we told you to pay us at? Go ahead and pay us at this other bank account number, if you don't mind, right? Again, if there's like bad English or something like that in there, sure, there's maybe going to be like a, this is a little fishy, but absent any poor language, you know, if we took a look at the headers of that message, those headers would indicate that the message was legitimately sent from that contractor's mail server. So the only thing that we have left available to determine whether or not that email is legitimate is to confirm with the purported sender out of band. Again, out of band being very important. If you respond back to that email and say, is this really you? You might not have good fucking luck with the answer that you get if it's an actual compromised account. All right, you laugh, but I've had fucking users do this in response to display spoof fishes. All right, Joel told you about those fishes where literally I sign up for a Gmail account, CEO1@gmail.com, and I change my name to whatever the fuck my CIO's name. It's Gary, or it was Gary Allen. Pretty fucking common name, mind you. It's real hard for administrators to seem to understand that I can block CEO1@gmail.com, but nothing stops the asshole from going to another email provider and changing your display name to Gary fucking Allen. All right? This is a training and awareness issue. As much as we as a community wish that we could solve all of our problems through technical controls, that doesn't work here. All right? Not without some, yeah, fucking clap for me. Yeah. Again, I don't like talking to customers as much as the next guy, but at the end of the day, you need to communicate these risks to your users. They need to understand what's happening, all right? Now, granted, as the larger your org gets, the harder that is to actually make sure that that gets into the hands of those who need it. Ask me how I know. But anyway, so the biggest thing that headers give you for messages that are spam or abuse is where to report that spam or abuse to. Yeah, okay, without further ado, I tell you what, let's go ahead and move into our work together phase. So I see no laptops out. Fuck all y'all. That took some time to put together. Y'all can suck my dick. Now, okay, I see one laptop out. Thank you, Kayla. Thank you, Kayla.
I got a laptop.
Are you doing this shit? Alright, cool, he's doing this shit too. I thought he had a microphone, that's just a beard. Alright, so, if you're following along, open up header1.txt, copy the contents of header1.txt, slap that motherfucker into your header analyzer of choice. Now, since I didn't give you the actual email, what I've done for these is I have taken a screenshot of the email so y'all can take a look at what an individual sees when they open the email, alright? What we have here is a message purportedly from Jonathan Curtright. Again, that's someone on what I like to call Mahogany Row. All right, that's important people live there. So pretty obvious fish. Again, this is a display name spoof. I make this aside because I actually didn't know that Joel was going to talk about it as well, but I have some pictures, so that's cool too. As Joel alluded to earlier, the reason why display name spoofs keep working is because of mobile email clients being used in regular business on a day-to-day basis. If we, so Becky Fowler is the government name of my boss. She very kindly gave me permission to impersonate her identity to create some awareness images. So here on the, I guess what, upper left-ish, the bigger image, the hot dog formatted image, you can see that as viewed in a desktop Outlook client. Again, pretty fucking obvious that it's a display name fish. No one should be sending mail from missouri.edu@gmail.com. However, if you take a look at the hamburger formatted image, you like my 4th grade terminology here, we can see how these fishes actually succeed, all right? If I check that email on my phone very helpfully is trying to say, hey, Becky Fowler sent you this message, all right? And I mean, just looking at that, kind of looks like a legitimate message from Becky Fowler, right? Now, as it turns out, if I actually do physically press Becky Fowler there, I do in fact see this Gmail email address, but that's not intuitive. Nobody fucking does that whenever they are looking on their mobile email client. Show of hands, how many of you verify the sending email address in your mobile mail client? Fuck you, you're liars, put your hands down. Maybe you're not lying, I don't know. And if you're not, kudos to you, because you go through way more trouble to check your email than most other people. But anyway, that is how display name spoofs work. So, if we take a look at headers1.txt in our message analyzer of choice, again, I'm using MHA here, so your output might look slightly different depending on what tool you're using, but what we have here at the very top is the path that the email took. Don't worry, I'm going to move on to a slide where that's bigger. I just wanted to put everything on one slide. We see the security headers that are listed there. So in this particular case, this tool puts the results of SPF, DKIM, and I think just authentication results in that section. And then finally, we've got a whole shitload of X headers. So again, those X headers are something that is added in by, again, commonly going to be like an email security appliance. As I'm sure you can tell by the X headers that are shown here, we utilize Cisco iron ports at the university. That was Carolina, if you're wondering. She works for Cisco. So it was Carolina too, wasn't it? Yeah, fucking right. All right, so survey says, if we take a look at this, it is a fish. Yes, that was pretty obvious. Note that one simple trick that some phishers will use is to spoof the sending domain of one mail provider, but actually use a different one. For example, spoof Gmail, but send it from a Yahoo account. So this is why even in the cases of an obvious phish, one needs to check those headers. You need to report the phish to the organization, that can actually do something about it. Now, if I zoom in on those headers, if we take a look at the path that this email took, we can see here that there were, 5 hops? So it's also important to understand your own mail setup in order to properly review these headers. I generally wind up sending abuse reports to the contact that's listed for the IP in the hop right before it hits our mail servers. Now, if you're taking a look at this image, you might think, oh, well, the one before their mail servers is that third hop, right? Because it goes from IPHMX to umsystem.edu. That is wrong. So the IPHMX domain is the cloud-based iron port appliances. That is actually technically where our mail flow starts. So if I didn't know that about my organization and I reported this email to Cisco, what the fuck do you think they're going to do? Absolutely nothing, besides maybe circulate that email around and say, look at this idiot from the University of Missouri who doesn't know how to fucking read mail headers. But none of you are going to run into that problem because you watched my talk. Yeah. That is, again, if you take a look, hop 2 there, we can see is the last hop before it hits our iron port appliance. That is, in fact, Google, so we will send that abuse report to Google. You might think that you can just send an email message to abuse@google.com. You'd be wrong about that. It seems like a lot of times now, whenever I try to contact an abuse email address, I get an auto response back that tells me that I have to go through their stupid, unique-ass bullshit method of reporting this email so that they have all the information that they need because they can't be arsed to check the fucking abuse mailbox. I'm sorry, I get upset about these sorts of things if you can't tell. C'est la vie, right? Okay, so let's hit up message number 2, shall we? Again, what are we taking a look at here? We've got, this is coming from support, all right? This is coming from helpdesk.missouri.edu@realemail.com. Oh, well, fuck me. Real email, maybe this isn't a fish, huh? We've got some attachment, we've got some links that we're asking our user to click. Those of you who are maybe more observing will notice that there's a little image that is failing to load at the bottom there. Anyone want to take a gander at what that is? Tracking image, exactly. So I'm not going to spoil what this is just yet, but this is another very common phishing tactic, is that your attacker is going to embed a 1x1 pixel image that makes a call out, an HTTP call out, whenever that email is opened. That gives the attacker confirmation that you have seen that email. Now personally, I don't think this matters that much. If you think about it, I don't give a shit if you do. If you think about it, a user has to look at an email to determine whether it's legitimate or not, right? Now, ideally, you would not be loading external pictures by default. As you can see here, I've got that turned off, but infuriatingly enough, this is a client-side option. Okay? Even for on-prem Exchange servers, you are not able to say, don't load pictures by default. Don't understand why. I think it ought to be like that. If anyone from in here is in Microsoft, please communicate that up the chain. Tell them Aaron Scantlin asked very nicely for it. Now, let's go ahead and take a look at the headers for this email and see what we can learn. Again, I really wish I had put my animations in here because that would have made this a little bit more, given it a little more pizzazz. But this time, if we take a look at those headers in our analysis tool, we'll see that we've got some interesting X headers, all right? In this particular case, this email was from a self-phishing exercise that we launched. However, if it were a real phish, there wouldn't really be much of a point in reporting it to the sending domain, realemail.com. Realemail.com, if they were an actual attacker, probably doesn't give a flying fuck about my abuse report saying that they're sending me phishing emails. All right, so in this particular case, what you would need to do is go for the registrar. All right, in this particular case, or I guess the hosting provider is the more accurate way to say that, not the registrar. If we take a look at our hops, again, you're probably having trouble seeing that from this distance, but if we do a whois on the IPv6 or the IPv4 address, that's the last hop before our mail servers, we would see that this resolves to a cloud hosting provider called Linode. So I would like to give a quick shout out to Linode, actually. They don't pay me, they don't give me any discounts on their shit. But what I appreciate about them is that they allow us to run our self-phishing campaigns from their infrastructure. Not only that, when I called Linode and I said, yo, we want to phish our users from your shit, are you down with that? They said, yeah, we're down, and by the way, if anyone reports your shit to us, we'll go ahead and forward that to your abuse mailbox. So, big ups to Linode. That didn't cost any extra either. And is anyone paying for self-phishing from like a big company like KnowBe4 or Sans or some shit? Cool, so anyone that raised their hand, if you want to do this for like 90% less, and if you want it to be more customizable, hit me up. We can rap about how we're doing this. Our GoFish server runs us $20 a month. And I can send out, I think, like 1,000 messages in like 5 or 6 seconds or so. So it scales up pretty fucking nicely. We have self-phished our entire hospital division, all right? So university campus is one thing, then we have the hospital, because, I don't know, we're cool. We've phished all of our hospital employees. The results are kind of sad. Like 17,000 emails go out, and we get like 1,000 that report it. So, I mean, I guess it's cool that no one's clicking on them and shit, but still, man, how sobering is that? All right, so yeah, shout out Linode for supporting this sort of thing. Our big other thing that we take a look at here, if we examine those X headers, is that we can see we've got an X ironport sender group and an X ironport mail flow policy. So again, this is kind of easy to understand since I told you that this was a self-phishing exercise, but we can see that the ironport sender group is whitelist and the mail flow policy is trusted. The reason is that we told our email team that we were doing this because hopefully ironport would have caught these and said, no, this is bullshit, go away. So we need to make sure that it actually does arrive at inboxes. That would have been maybe confusing though if, let's say, a hospital system administrator got a report from one of their users, said, hey, I think this is a phish, but we didn't tell any of the hospital support that we were doing a phish for obvious reasons. We're trying to phish them too. Yeah, so that gives you some information there. All right, let's make things a little bit more interesting, shall we? You guys had some pretty easy ones for these first ones. I said you guys, y'all. Isn't it kind of funny that we live in a world where y'all is more progressive than you guys? Anyway, so here we have an email of unknown disposition with some attachments, all right? If you can't read that, and you probably can't, this is purportedly a request from a student at a university over in Istanbul requesting to get into a PhD instructor's program. Again, this is not uncommon in the land of higher ed. So even though you might think immediately, oh, this looks like a phish, if you work in higher ed, you would be kind of like, maybe it could be, I'm 50-50 at first glance at this, right? So they'll target specific professors since there's generally a fair amount of info about them and their research posted publicly. All right, this is kind of why higher education is, at least one of the reasons why higher education is targeted so much by phishers, is that our org charts, by and large, are public information. Our directories are public information. I mean, we basically put the targets out there for you, and we tell you who to target based on who you're impersonating. Again, it's a double-edged sword. This is, that's information. We want to make that available, but it does have a downside. So it's also very common, for international students to directly contact professors who might be, interested in accepting them into their program, because oftentimes international students need some form of sponsorship in order to come over here and study over here. So again, it's something that is desired. This is not out of the ordinary, all right? But we don't know whether or not it's legit yet. So, if we take a look at these headers, this is headers 3, I believe, .text in the file. The first thing that we'll notice is that the hop order is real funky, all right? This purportedly started from my servers, then went to Google, then went to Cisco, then came back to Google, then back to me? That's pretty fucking weird. So this is kind of common to see for messages that get held up in quarantine. Right, so in MHA, in this particular version, if you click on the time column and order the rows by the header field time, the hops will rearrange to the proper order. So we can see here on the bottom section of this slide, I've rearranged it such that the times are what we are basing on, not the hops, and then that winds up rearranging the hops such that it actually shows the path that it took. Now, if we go on and take a look at some more headers, again, you can see here in our top image, kind of really small text, the order is now correct for the path that it took. Hop 3 is now listed as the first one. Again, this is all because of the quarantine delay. Notice that the extra headers that we have, not necessarily X headers, but also the extra headers, aren't in exactly the same format. Okay, we had our security headers section that detailed the SPF and the DKIM authorization checks. So DKIM and they've been set up there, but they didn't show up there this time. Anyone hazard a guess why? The header fields were not capitalized. Yeah, I know, kind of whack. This is more of an MHA thing, okay? Its encoding is just basically looking for whether or not those headers are capitalized, and if they match that correct string, it'll put them in a special area. Again, there's nothing wrong with these headers, just that they were applied in a non-standard format. Now, I'm not going to get super deep into SPF or DKIM since we have already had multiple good talks on that here at SecKC. Let's see, is Caleb Christopher here tonight? I don't think so. So if you're not aware of what SPF, DKIM, and DMARC are or how they can help your organization, go on our YouTube page whenever you leave here, look up Caleb Christopher, and he gave an amazing talk on SPF, DKIM, and DMARC. Check that out. To give you a 1,000-foot overview, I do want to kind of mention what they do since they do play into our decision-making process for this header. SPF and DKIM, as Joel mentioned in his talk, are both ways for a domain to designate who is permitted to send email on its behalf. All right, SPF does this through providing information via DNS text record, where the organization states what domains are authorized to send on its behalf. And DKIM does it in almost the same way. It's also using a DNS text record, but in that DNS text record, there is a public key, and it is signing messages outgoing with the corresponding private key. Again, this is just another way to verify that the sender actually is who they claim to be. So, in fewer words, if we take a look at the header results here, again, I'm pretty sure I redacted everything. It's going to be real fucking embarrassing if I gave anyone's real email out here, but if we take a look at these, both our SPF and DKIM checks passed in this case. So, what does that tell us? That tells us that this was legitimately sent from some server that, I'm probably going to mispronounce this, but here.edu.tr has authorized to send email on their behalf. I guess I didn't put notes on this one. So, all right, we know that it was sent by that domain or someone authorized to act on their behalf, but I still don't know if that's a legitimate domain. So again, I'm gonna go to my trusty old friend Whois, and I'm gonna look up that domain. If I do a Whois on that, I see it is in fact registered to Istanbul Tahir University, and they have an interesting choice in DNS provider, but you know, other than that, this all kind of checks out, all right? The domain was created in 2008, so again, is this potentially a fish? It's still possible, but damn, someone went a real long fucking way to make this look good. Not only that, I mean, we can sanity check a little bit further. Google the name of the fucking university. Again, is this bulletproof? No, but look how happy those students are. How would a hacker get that picture? They're so happy. By and large, though, I mean, again, at this point, we've got enough evidence to assume that this is, in fact, a real university. So let's take a look at this email again, all right? We definitely know for a fact that this message was sent from sahir.edu.tr, and we're reasonably sure that it's a legitimate university, all right? We can't be 100% sure. But our header analysis hasn't yet turned up enough information to say whether this is legitimate or not. Again, that's not something headers can provide, okay? You need more than that. So one of the ways that one would maybe go in order to make an authoritative claim on legitimacy for this particular email would be to check out the attachments. Now, there are multiple ways to check out email attachments. There are places like VirusTotal, right, where you can upload, and my personal favorite, any.run. I have any.run users up in here tonight. Yeah, so for those of you that aren't hip to this dopeness, this is a free online sandbox that allows you to either give it a URL or upload a file to it, and you get to interact with that sandbox, all right, for 5 minutes. This is easily one of my most favorite free tools. Again, I work for a university. Money is not something that we get very often because our governor doesn't give a fuck about education. So if I can get something for free, I'm about it. If I go over to this next slide, I go into, they've got a little screenshot here. So again, the cool thing is how instrumented this is. I get all of the HTTP requests, all of the DNS requests, a whole hell of a lot more. This is an awesome tool for gathering IOCs on a suspicious file or URL. However, it is important to know when it's right to use a public tool and when it's not. So one of the downsides of a free any.run account is that all of your submissions are public, all right? Now, I'm not sure about you, but I'd be pretty fucking pissed off if I found out that my transcripts got uploaded to some public repository where literally anyone could view them, all right? So that's another fun topic for a future talk, analysts that upload sensitive documents to public security file scanning repositories, but yeah, give me a few months to write that one and I'll really make you shit your pants there. So in this particular case, we've got two options available to us, right? We can use a private scanning tool if we have one available to us, or what's sometimes more convenient, at least for a real quick check, is to just transfer those suspicious files to some disposable VM that isn't connected to your corporate network, all right? Just open the motherfucker, all right? Let it ruin the VM. Doesn't matter, you're opening it in a disposable VM. Again, that's not bulletproof, right? Maybe that malware doesn't fire off for 20 minutes or something like that afterward. Again, nothing is bulletproof, but the name of the game here is to provide some reasonable amount of assurance that this email is or is not safe. If you happen to be an InfraGard member, there is a free private scanning tool that is provided on the InfraGard website that is okay. If you have the time and resources, you could set up something like Cuckoo Sandbox internally. Otherwise, I'm sure your friendly neighborhood security vendor would love to sell you something that uses AI or machine learning is another big one, right? In order to help defend your shit. So, what's the verdict on this one? Any guesses? It's legitimate. All right, so what I wound up doing was popping this in the InfraGard sandbox, because again, this was sent to a high-ranking person within the university. I wanted to make pretty damn sure that this was not malicious, and this is a pretty common phishing angle for attacking higher education facilities. Okay, I've got like 3 minutes left. Let's get through our last one before I wrap up and take any questions you might have. So, if we take a look at this email, it looks pretty fucking garbo at first glance. System accounting, remittance advice notification. Are you fucking shitting me? Okay, cool. If we read that email, that is like the most blanket default text message I have ever seen in my fucking life. Looks pretty shitty. Let's take a look at the headers. Oh, well that's strange. It appears to be coming from my network, going to my network. Huh. So if we look at the hops, we can in fact see that this was generated by a umsystem.edu machine. And additionally, we can see that there is an X header indicating that this was an internal email. All right, is it legit though? Does that tell us the message is legitimate? I heard someone say yes, that is incorrect. The answer is no, all right? We just know that this email was sent from a system on the umsystem.edu domain, okay? We would want to examine the attachment for additional verification of legitimacy, but again, we probably don't want to upload something like this to a public scanner. So, fired this one up in a disposable VM. Looked legit. Wouldn't you know, it was an invoice for payment from System. But again, I like to be like 110% sure. So again, we would love to solve everything with technical controls, right? You want to know what made me 110% sure this was legit? Humans. Fucking right, I called them. I said, hey, do you guys run the account System Accounting? Yeah. Do you know how shitty this email looks? Oh, really? Can you send it to me? Oh, with pleasure. Oh yeah, that does look pretty bad. We'll work with the teams to get that reworded. I appreciate that. Click. There we go. All right, that's all it took. I could have spent fucking hours, right, trying to get to 100%. That's all I needed, right? And even if they were wrong, not my fault, not my problem. All right, so now can you really blame the user for having reported this now? No, you can't. All right, we wound up asking the team that manages the server to modify the subject and the contents of that body to make it sound not like a piece of shit. All right, so what did we learn here today? All that shit. I got like 30 seconds left, so I'm not going to belabor it. But with my last little bit of time, I never do this, and I feel like I really should. I've mentioned that I come out from Columbia all the time. Well, first off, I want you to know that I totally fucking have that alias, all right? So you can hit me up at hackerman@missouri.edu. I want you to know how much fucking political wrangling it took for them to be okay with me getting that alias. But I really do want to give a shout out to Mizzou for, again, every month letting me usually take the do-it van to come out here, spend my time with you guys, talk to you about what I've learned, and get back to the community. Do I have any questions? All right, super dope. Hit me up if you got questions and you don't want to share them